Right. Our webinar today is on the updated minimum standards, the highly anticipated update to the minimum standards. I just got someone said a coworker is having trouble. I can't help you whenever I'm teaching the class. So if you want to call GoToTraining or call my office, we can assist you. But in the chat screen, I can't do anything to help you. So give us a call in the office and Kevin can help you out. All right, so the standards, the very highly anticipated minimum standards that we've been waiting for since October are here. And we know that we had the update to the minimum standards back in September that were all from the Child Care and Development Block Grant updates, the CCDBG. Those were all federal updates to the minimum standards that were put in place. But 2016 was also time for the 6-year review. Licensing is required to review the standards every 6 years and make necessary adjustments based on stakeholder feedback. And that was also due in 2016. So that's what we're going to go over today. The committee was put together and recommendations were made. This was placed on the Texas Registry for feedback back in October. And the first several pages of this document that you will see, and we're not going to go over all of this, is going to cover all of the comments that were made during that September-October review period. So again, we don't have time to go over all of this stuff today, but it is kind of interesting reading, and I would encourage y'all to kind of go over this and read through it whenever you do have some spare time. It kind of helps you to understand where some of these rules come from, the history behind the rule, the purpose, all that kind of stuff. We're going to go ahead and skip on down to what you see here, page 183, where we actually start getting to the updates, okay? Now, the document that you have in front of you was filed with the Texas Registry on March 8th of 2017. This document was published on the Texas Registry March 24th, and then it is going to go into effect on April 15th. So sometime between now and April, probably the end of April, we will get our updated minimum standards booklet that we're all used to, because I know these pages right now look very foreign to you. But you'll get your updated minimum standards that will have a new effective date down here that will say April of 2017. That has not been published yet. It's not out there yet. We'll just have to keep an eye out for it. Everything that's going to be changing, though, is in the document that you have in front of you. All right. So what I've done is I've gone through here and I have highlighted all of the changes that you will see on April 15th. Now, for those of you that are kind of familiar with this, we did not see a whole lot of changes from what was proposed in October. There were several of the proposed rules that were withdrawn, things that did not make the final cut, and then there was some wording that was changed in some of the proposed standards. Other than that, that was it. All right, there was nothing really new that was added to the proposal, and there's nothing that we're going to talk about today that is earth-shattering. All right, nothing in here should rock your world very much. And in fact, based on my review of this and the conversations that I've had with folks, I think that what licensing has done here is going to make our life easier, in my opinion. They did a really, really nice job of clarifying a lot of the rules that have been a little wishy-washy, and there were a lot of interpretation issues. So they've done a nice job of trying to clear some of that up. Okay? So with that being said, we're just going to jump on in there because I want to make sure that we get everything covered in the hour that we've got. Now, y'all may have noticed that the time frame on the webinar says from 1 to 2:30. I allowed an extra 30 minutes just in case we go over on time. I did not want go-to training to just cut us off at 2 o'clock in the middle of a conversation. So that's why you saw 1 to 2:30, just to give us that little cushion right there. All right. The majority of the changes that you're going to see is with definitions. All right. This is where most of the changes took place, is under terms and definitions. You're going to see that there were several definitions removed from the standards, mainly because they were redundant. They were no longer needed. They were outdated. And you're going to see a lot of new definitions that were added. Now, those of you that have attended my weekend my director credential course, you know, I always talk about the first 4 pages of the minimum standards are 4 of the most important pages. This is where the terms and definitions are laid out. And usually when someone is not understanding a rule, and especially when you've got a director and a licensing rep who are having a misinterpretation, it's usually because one of the 2 people do not understand a term or definition. So these are really, really important pages for you. All right, so let's kind of scroll on down here to the first thing that we're going to see, and it goes from left column to right column. So we'll start. And again, this is page 184 of that big document. And in fact, if any of y'all need it, there's the website that you can find this document, but it's also in your materials tab on your toolbar right there. So the first thing that we're going to see is number 8 right here. Now, prior to this set of rules, you used to have the definition of a bungee jumper and the definition of a baby walker. Those 2 items have come out, and they've now added in the definition of a bouncer seat. And a bouncer seat is the stationary seat designed to provide a gentle rocking or bouncing motion for the infant. All right. All of the items that you're going to see right here are part of the infant sleep safety guidelines, and all of the infant sleep safety guidelines are federal mandates and federal recommendations. It's 2 different situations there. We knew these things were coming, all right? And you'll even notice when you kind of read over that comment stuff that this is kind of, it is what it is type of thing. Now, you're going to see that they're going to define the definition of a bouncer seat because you're going to see some rules on infant sleeping in these devices here in just a little bit. So the rules needed to be put in place. So that's your first addition to the definitions, is the bouncer seat. And then we're going to go down here. They added a definition of a child, an infant, toddler, pre-K, or school-age child. All right, not a big deal right there. Number 15, they added definition of child care program. All right, not a big deal right there. Then we're going to go back up, and number 17 is huge, ginormous. And for me, number 17 is my favorite addition to these new standards, because they are going to clarify the differences between instructor-led training, self-instructional training, and self-study training. And y'all know that back in September, they added the rule on self-study training that no more than 3 hours of your annual hours can be done through self-study training. And there's a huge difference between self-instructional training and self-study training. And for the last 6 months, this has been kind of a nightmare. And I'm sure a lot of y'all on this webinar have had experiences with licensing and the interpretation of this new rule. So they did a really nice job clarifying all this. All right. So an instructor-led training is something that is a seminar, a workshop, a conference, a class, planned learning opportunities, all right, that meet all of the criteria in 1317. And we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. So basically, instructor-led training is face-to-face training where there's an opportunity for interaction. Makes sense, right? Self-instructional training is training that was created by an individual and then self-study. And there's going to be some more definitions on these two here in just a minute, so hold tight, all right? I don't want to bounce around, so I'm just going to keep going in order. You're going to see number 22. They added a definition of entrapment, all right? Basically an opening that could trap a child's head, all right, or that is too small for the child's body to pass through. Again, this is going along with the infant sleep safety guidelines. They needed to define this, okay? On 25, they've moved the definition of frequent. This was in the TAC, the Texas Administrative Code. They've moved this from the administrative code over to the standards for clarification. Frequent is more than 2 times in a 30-day period. This is applicable to background checks, okay? You're going to see on 30, under high school equivalent, and it kind of hops over here to page 185, basically documentation from the Texas Education Agency showing that they completed high school studies. That can be a diploma, that can be a GED, or it can be the high school certificate of completion. What you're going to see a couple of times throughout this document is that they added language about children who are homeschooled and who have complete studies through homeschooling, and that is accepted by licensing. So that's what you're going to see right there. All right. They added 36, a local sanitation official. They added 38, a permit no longer valid. We don't want to see that one, right? They added the definition of a premises, which is basically your property. And 41, again, that restrictive device, very similar to the definition that we just went over. Let's kind of go back up here. And then we've got a really big one, okay? And number 43 is pretty huge. And this is the definition of sanitize. Now, previously in the standards, it talked about, using the 4-step sanitation process, using bleach water solution, wash it with soap and water, rinse it with clear water, soak it or spray it with the solution, allow it to air dry. What you're going to see here now is that if you are using an alternate chemical that is registered with the Environmental Protection Agency and meets the licensing requirements, you're going to see now that it's going to say that you follow the manufacturer's instructions. Rather than the 4-step process, you'll follow the manufactured instructions. So that's pretty big, okay? Depending on what chemicals you're using, this could cut down on your sanitizing time, okay? And also, you're going to see that there's kind of a discouragement to using bleach water. That it's going to talk about that it is toxic, and you got to be really careful and make sure that you get the regular strength liquid household bleach, right? So that's kind of a big one right there. Then we go on to 45, and this is again where we're going to get the definitions of self-instructional training and self-study training. So going back to the training part of it. All right, it's going to tell you self-instructional training is training designed to be used by one individual working alone at the individual's own pace to complete lessons or modules. Lessons or modules commonly include questions with a clear right or wrong answer. An example of these type of trainings would be web-based training, online trainings, self-study training is also a type of self-instructional training. So basically on self-instructional training, you want to look for the planned learning opportunity, the curriculum, the assessment tool or a worksheet or a test, and then a certificate of completion. And when we get to 746, 13, 17, you'll see everything that needs to be in there. Now, 46 is going to cover self-study training. Okay, and this is non-standardized training where an individual reads written material, watches a video, or listens to a recording and basically given a certificate. Okay? So the difference, and what I want y'all to see, the difference between 45 and 46 is the question answer part. All right? Is there a worksheet? Is there something that they write on? That type of thing. If there's no worksheet, if they just watch it, they get a certificate, that's considered self-study. If they do a worksheet, if they do an assessment, if they do an evaluation, that's self-instructional. Okay? Still going to take a while for everyone to get on this, but this is going to help. Okay? This is going to help. All right? Everyone doing okay? Remember, if you got a question or something, type it into your chat screen. I've got all of the microphones muted, so type your questions in the chat screen. And that's it for terms and definitions. So like I said, not a whole lot right there. Patrice says, Tim, I'm assuming there's a question coming behind it. All right, I'll kind of wait and see if that pops up right there. What is the limit on self-instructional? 80%. All right, so 80% of your training can be done through self-instructional material, or 19 of your 24 hours. I'll type that in too. So, oh, I can't type all of a sudden. So there you go. That way, again, but that's what you can do right there. So that was increased in September as well. All right, going down to 746.301 on when must you notify licensing of a change to your operation. They added a number 10 right here. There is a change in ownership of a sitter. This is, again, nothing new. It's a clarification. You cannot transfer a license from one owner to another. The new owner, the new permit holder, has to get their own license. But again, that was kind of vague in there, so they've added that right there. Okay. Also, the designee of your program. Again, this is a clarification right here. It's not a sole proprietor. The designee would be the permit holder. So that's just a clarification as well. All right. Let's go over here to required postings. On required postings, what you see added is the Texas Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline. Now, previously, what you saw right here was it just said under the required postings, the Child Abuse Hotline. All right. So now you'll see that they added the telephone number. So this little 1-800-252-5400 is what was added right here. Okay. That'll be helpful for all of us as well. All right, operating policies. We've got quite a few little changes and important changes to your operating policy. So you will need to work on updating your parent handbook and your employee handbook, with these new rules. Let me go ahead and tell you all this too. These new rules go into effect on April 15th. From what I'm being told, and I do have this in writing, they're going to give us technical assistance for the first 6 months. So you should not get any deficiencies on these items for the first 6 months, only technical assistance. Now, I know many of you are a lot like me. I don't like technical assistance, so I want to have it all right the first time, but that is what they're telling us. Under your written operating policies, you're going to see number 3, illness and exclusion criteria. There's some changes to illness and exclusion criteria that we'll talk about here in a couple of chapters, but this is going to affect your policy that you have in your parent handbook on when a child can attend and when they are excluded from care whenever they're ill, and under what conditions, what must be met in order for them to return. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but you want to make note of number 3. You're going to need to update your policy. Number 8 is a big one. you're going to have a policy on suspension and expulsion of children. All right, so that's a new one right there. Now, a lot of us already had this in our discipline and guidance policies. You're probably going to need to separate this out so that it is its own policy now to help you, maintain compliance with licensing. And what I really recommend that y'all do on this one is separate this out into two different categories on when you expel a child and when you kick a family out. All right. So when do you kick the kid out? When do you kick the parents out is another way of explaining it. So this type of behavior will get the child expelled. These type of items will get the family kicked out. So obviously not paying their tuition, returned payments, parent code of conduct, custody issues, however you want to word that. But I would definitely encourage y'all to separate those out. I'm actually going to have a webinar in the very near future just on this subject. So kind of keep an eye out for that one. You're also going to see number 9 that we must have a policy on sleep safety for infants. All right. And so basically all of the infant sleep safety guidelines that we have to follow now need to be in your parent handbook. And I know this one kind of sounds crazy and you might be going, ugh, I think this is going to help so much and definitely help our parents understand why we are restricted on doing so many things that they're probably doing at home. And I'm sure a lot of y'all have had the feedback from the parent, where's the bumper pads? Where's the stuffed animals? Where's all of these cute and fuzzy things? Well, we can't put those in the crib. This is going to help, I think. All right. You're going to see here under immunization requirements, this has always been a policy, but they just added the tuberculosis screening. You're going to see this a couple of times through here, that under TB testing, they're now going to refer you to your local health department. Most counties and cities in Texas no longer require this. So that's why licensing is going to refer you to your local jurisdiction for your requirements. Okay. 18 is a good one. You're going to see that you must have a policy on applying bug repellent sunscreen and sunscreen. Now, a lot of us we've always been doing this, but there may or may not have been a policy, and it definitely has not been covered in minimum standards until now. Okay, so they needed to add this one in here. This is going to make our life easier as well. So you're going to add a policy on bug repellent and sunscreen. All right, this next page right here, we can just skip over. There's nothing in that you need to be concerned about. Whenever we get to page 189 up here, and I'm kind of following these page numbers right here, all of this stuff right here, that is all part of the 603. All right, what records must I have for my children? There's really not anything new right here. They've just restructured it, and the outline is a little bit different. Okay, definitely want you to read over all this stuff, but nothing that you should really need to change in, in there. A good question from Tammy. What if we don't have infants? Does this policy still need to be included in your handbook? The correct answer that I'm supposed to give you, Tammy, is that I'm going to refer you to your local licensing rep for their interpretation of this rule, because it depends on what rep you've got. If it's a not applicable, then obviously you don't need to have the policy. What I would recommend, just to keep you in compliance, I would still have the policy listed, but then say not applicable due to the fact that we do not start taking children until 18 months or 4 years or whatever. I would still list it in your handbook, but just state that you do not have children of this age. I was at a session back in January. I was doing a faith-based conference, and I was on a panel of experts, and there was a licensing investigator on this particular panel with me, and she was adamant that everything in this book better be in your policies, whether you do it or not. And she said that she does give deficiencies if it's not in the policies. And this is what she said: if you don't do it, just put not applicable. But she still wants to see it in there. Again, I think that was her interpretation, but I think that that's something that could be easily fought in an administrative review. But this is a great example of pick your battles wisely. I would just go ahead and put it in there. One thing that I did see in here that I wanted to point out under your immunizations, and I have heard this from several of y'all, that you were cited for not having a signature on your immunization records. I've heard that from many, many providers. And I've even heard from several providers that the rubber stamp or electronic signature, they still got a deficiency because it wasn't a handwritten signature. So I wanted to point out right here that it does say the signature of the healthcare professional, including a rubber stamp or electronic signature. So when you do collect your immunization records, according to what you see right here on page 189, that rubber stamp and that electronic signature is accepted. Okay, so hopefully that will help some of you that have experienced this difficulty in the past. All right, moving on to Division 3, records that must be kept on file at the Child Care Center. Under what records must I keep for my employees, 801. Actually, this is what records must be kept at the center. Attendance records or timesheets have always been in here, but you're going to see that they added listing all days and hours worked for each employee. So the wording changed just a little bit on this one. It's nothing new. I just always like to remind people of number 5. This does include your salaried exempt employees. So not just your hourly employees, but your salaried exempt employees. You must also have time sheets or attendance records for these individuals as well. And remember that this is not only a licensing requirement, this is also a Texas Workforce Commission requirement. You must have record of attendance for your salaried exempt employees as well as hourly employees. So you've got 2 agencies that you've got to keep happy right here. All right. Yes, Alicia, that would include a director like you. So you're a salaried exempt employee, so you do need to have record of your time as well. All right. Very good. Let's go on down. We've got some stuff that, again, all of this stuff, there were some wording changes, but nothing, again, that should rock your boat. It's going to talk about designating a director. And under 1039, what documentation must I submit to licensing showing that my director is qualified? This is for those of you that when you first become a director and you submit all your paperwork to get your director's license, they've added something new to this list. 1, 2, and 3 are all the same. You're now going to have to submit complete dates, names, addresses, and telephone number that your experience can be verified. All right. So a resume, things like that, that licensing will be able to verify that you really do have the experience that you claim that you have. I'm assuming that there's been some falsification of resumes or personal history statements out there, and they felt the need to add that. Okay. Under your employees and what qualifications that your employees meet, again, you're going to see that they added homeschool approval. You're going to see it here and here. These are always duplicate with your children 16 and 17. But again, there's so many children being homeschooled these days, they needed to add in the homeschooling part in here. So that's probably a good change as well. All right, kind of going over here to training. let me just go ahead and remind everybody about training hours and professional development. Licensing does not have the authority to make changes in training hour and professional development requirements because that is something that's written into statute. All right. Meaning the only way that training hours can change is through an act of legislation. So now the stuff that we saw changed on September 1st with the 6 new categories, the 6 new topics that had to be covered in orientation and annual training. Those were all federal mandates. And of course, the hierarchy of government, federal trumps state, state trumps local, the changes had to be made, even though professional development is in statute. Okay. What you're going to see right here under 1317, and 1317 is must the training my caregivers and directors meet certain criteria. The first 6 items remained exactly the same. And this is going to make sense to you as well. Where it talks about a person that has at least 2 years experience and then has a CDA, they added it must be a current CDA. Okay, so that word current is what changed right there. This is not anything new right here, but I did want to show you under 1317, B as in boy, because this is going to help you with your instructor-led training and your self-instructional training. Must have clearly stated learning objectives, a curriculum with applied activities, an evaluation or assessment tool, and a certificate of completion. So if you notice, it's going to talk right here about instructor-led training and self-instructional training. This is where you see those self-study hours are absent right here. So when you start talking to your licensing rep about what's the difference between self-instructional training and self-study training, this is the difference, okay? So that's what you want to look for. And the biggest thing is number 3 and 4. There's an assessment piece and a certificate of training is given to you by the trainer or producer. All right. So hopefully that'll clarify those things up. Okay. Moving right along. We're going through this pretty quick. It's not a whole lot of stuff. So hopefully y'all will see that. All right, basic care requirements for infants. So 746-2415. Again, this is all part of that infant sleep safety guidelines. We knew all of this stuff was coming. It's not anything new. Under the restricted items, all right, you may not use the following equipment for infants. Under the baby jumpers, they added doorway in there. I can't believe they still make those, but they apparently do. Those are prohibited. They have been forever. They added this right here under number 5, where it talks about bean bags, water beds, and foam pads used for sleeping equipment, except for tight-fitting sheets. All right. So the tight-fitting sheets obviously need to be in the crib. Now, this is the one exception that I'm going to make where I said nothing in here should rock your world. This might be the one thing added that could rock your world. All right. It's going to say right here that a crib mattress may also be used, and the crib mattress must be designed specifically for the size and type of crib and crib mattress that is being used. All right, a crib mattress cover. If you're using crib mattress covers, you're going to have some type of documentation or proof showing that it's designed specifically for that type of crib or mattress. All right, that might, discourage you from using a mattress cover right there. All right, and of course it must be tight fitting. It must be designed to make sleep, or may not be designed to make the sleep surface softer. Okay, because that's going to go into the SIDS right there. So pay close attention to the crib mattress cover. If you're using those, probably not a good idea anymore. Okay. All right. 746-2426. This entire standard is brand new. All right. May I allow infants to sleep in a restrictive device? And remember, your restrictive device is going to be that bouncy seat, that swing, you know, those type of items. You may not allow an infant to sleep in a restrictive device. If an infant falls asleep in a restrictive device, the infant must be removed from the device and placed in the crib as soon as possible. All right. The only exception is if you have this new form, the sleep exception form, that includes a signature from the healthcare professional stating that it is sleeping in the restrictive device is medically necessary. So if you do have that kid that, you know, with the reflux and they need to be propped up, you're going to need to have this sleep exception form that is going to be provided to us from licensing, filled out by the doctor. Okay. The cover, let me go back. There was a question, cover meaning sheet. No, that's not how I'm reading that, because we can't have anything in the crib but the baby. And then, of course, the firm, tight-fitting sheet that's over the mattress. The way I'm reading this right here is the mattress cover. So you know how you've got your mattress that is usually kind of got the plastic cover on it, but then you can buy the cover that goes over that so that if the child wets or throws up, it doesn't seep into your mattress, and it helps prolong the life of the mattress. That's what I'm reading this to be covered under, is that mattress cover. So not a sheet, not a blanket, not a sleep sack, but that cover that goes over the mattress, so it helps protect the mattress whenever it's soiled. All right. That's how I'm reading that right there. That was a very, very good question, by the way. All right. Same thing with going back to 24-27. Are infants required to sleep on their backs? Yes, this is not anything new. The only thing you see right here is, once again, this sleep exception form that is signed by the healthcare professional stating that it's medically necessary. Okay. Otherwise, everything else stays the same. Same thing with the swaddling too. I didn't highlight swaddling, but you see the same thing, the sleep exception form. All right. Very good. Kind of going on. We don't have a whole lot right here. There's some wording changed where it talks about discipline. You're going to see that this has been rearranged just a little bit. It's all the same information. It's just in a different order. All right. But again, nothing that you see new right here. Down under nutrition and food service, you did see some clarification, and this is a good one. I'm happy that they put this in here, where it talks about, may parents provide meals or snacks for their child instead of the program. This has always been allowed, but with the food allergy items that were added back in September, they needed to cover this. And so if you're going to see right here that snacks provided by the parent must not be shared with other children unless a parent is providing baked goods for a celebration or party at the center, and you ensure that the shared snacks meet the needs of children with the required special diets. So obviously, holidays and celebrations, we're still going to be able to do that. You're just going to have to make sure that there's, you know, no nuts, there's no egg whites, whatever food allergies you have in your program, you've checked that over really well. Okay. This was a good addition, in my opinion. They needed to add that. All right. As if we didn't have enough times to wash our hands, they added a 13th time to wash hands, and that's after removing gloves. So again, that was a clarification. Let's see, I got a question. Do you interrupt the infants not able to turn over must be placed face up? Does that mean that infants that can turn over can be placed down? Once the infant is able to turn over on their own, then you don't have to turn them back over. That's a good question right there. What I like to do to help stay in compliance right here is that once that infant is able to roll over on their own, we usually just make a cute little sign that says something like, "My name is Brenda and I can roll over." That way, if anyone comes in and they see that baby on its side or they see it on its tummy, they're going to know that the child rolled over on their own. We didn't place them in that position. All right, so it's all about the placement, how we place them in the crib. But great question. Once they're able to roll over on their own, you do not have to reposition them unless you feel there's an entrapment or a strangulation issue or another risk. All right. All right, so again, after we've removed gloves, you have to wash your hands. That was a good clarification that needed to be added. And then you see 746-3420 is a brand spanking new standard, and it's going to talk about, may I use hand sanitizer as a substitute for washing hands? You're going to see here that you can use hand sanitizer as a substitute if all of the following conditions are met. You only use hand sanitizer for children 24 months and older. You do not use hand sanitizers to wash hands that are visibly dirty or greasy or have chemicals on that, all right? Unless you're away from the classroom and soap and water is not available. So if the kids' hands are clean, you just got to wash hands because it's eating time or toileting time or whatever, and they appear to be clean, then it sounds like hand sanitizer can be used now. You follow the labeling instructions, and the children are supervised by the adult, and you store the hand sanitizer out of the reach of children. So that's our new rule on hand sanitizer. I'm personally not a fan of this new rule. I actually commented back in September opposing this new rule, but I lost that battle. All right. But now you can use that in those situations. Okay. Over here on diaper changing, this is an important one too. Under 3503, what equipment must I have for diaper changing? If the diaper changing surface is above floor level, okay, then at all times that the child is on the surface, the safety mechanism must be used. That's always been there. The caregiver's hand must remain on the child. That's always been there. Number 3 is what you're going to see new. The caregiver must be facing the child and within an arm's length of the child. Okay. Now, I still recommend all 3 of those, but if you'll notice, there is an or right here. Okay. But we don't want our babies falling off of the diaper changing table. Okay. There you go. Under safety practices over here, under 3703, how can I ensure the safety of the children from other persons? What you're going to see right here, oops, I apologize, I did not highlight it. Under D as in dog, people must not smoke any e-cigarettes, vaporizers, or tobacco products on your premises. So they added the e-cigarettes and the vapor devices. So make sure that you go back and you update your employee handbook to match this. The other thing that you'll see under this chapter is under 3707, where it talks about firearms. You're going to see some wording changed right here. Peace officers may carry a firearm into your program, people who are trained and certified to carry a firearm on duty. So the only thing that we saw is right here where it says peace officers. That was a wording change. I did want to point this out right here, that it says for all other persons, firearms, hunting knives, bows, and arrows, and other weapons are prohibited on the premises. This has not changed since 2003. What you do see changed right here is this prohibition does not apply to personal vehicles. So I'll tell you where this came from, and I'm sure it's pretty easy to figure it out. for people that have an open carry or concealed handgun license, all right, bringing those items into our early education programs is prohibited and has always been prohibited. But then you're like, well, what are they going to do with it? They've got to leave them somewhere. They usually leave them in their vehicle. So that's where this came from. Leaving it in the vehicle is going to be fine right there. All right. And there's a ton of different opinions on that one, but there's the rule. Where it talks about, may I have toys and other equipment that explode or shoot things. These have always been prohibited, but you'll see that they added, such as caps, BB guns, darts, or fireworks at the child care center or on the field trip. Okay, so they added two things to this one right here. They gave you some examples, but then they also added on the field trip. You're going to see this one other time too. While the child is on the field trip, when they are in your care, they must also follow the same rules that you would follow within the center. And that would include inflatables, that would include capacity, that would include toys that explode or shoot things. All of that on a field trip, you know, you have to follow the same rules. Okay? Going down to medications and medical assistance. Again, you're going to see right here, they added the insect repellent. All right. Oh, Lisa asked balloons. Okay. Balloons, that's an interpretation thing. I would call that explode or shoot things. Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Plus, balloons are choking hazards too. Kathy, you are absolutely right. I skipped over illness. I've got to go back to that. Thank you so much. Someone's got to keep me on track, and Kathy is in charge today. Thank you. Laser tag on field trips. It is shooting. Now, it's not shooting anything but a laser, but again, the interpretation of the local licensing rep, I would probably stay away from that if I were you. All right. On the insect, non-prescription medications, you just have to have parent permission on those. So this one right here, we would just have follow the manufacturer's directions with parent permission. It's the same thing with diaper ointment, sunscreen. They just added the insect repellent. Those are good questions right there. On Ashley, on no trampolines or inflatables on field trips, yeah, that's actually, that rule's always been in place. All right. So there you go. Verbal permission, remember, what's the rule with documentation? If it's not written down, it didn't happen. I would always get everything in writing. Okay. We actually have a sunscreen permission form, an insect repellent permission form, real quick and easy. The parent signs it, giving us permission, done deal. Let me skip back up here because I skipped one of the most exciting things. Oh my goodness. Under illness and injury, under 3606. This is a good one. Everyone get ready to jump up and down and be happy, all right? When may a child who is ill return to my child care center? All right. A child who was ill may return to your center after they are free of symptoms of illness for 24 hours, or you have obtained a healthcare professional statement that the child no longer has an excludable disease or condition. So what this means right here, huge right here. If a doctor just sends a note and says, Johnny has been seen in my office and is able to return to care, you're going to have to send that note back to the parent, back to the doctor. The note's going to have to specifically say that the child no longer has the excludable disease or condition. Can't just say they've been seen in my office and is able to return to care. I love that one, okay? It's got to be very specific. Now, I encourage you, go back to the policies, and when we talked about illness exclusion policies, you basically want to cut and paste this right here is exactly as written and cut and paste it right into your policies. That's what I would recommend. That way, when the parent starts yelling and screaming at you, you get to blame it on licensing. I love doing that. Pass the buck right there. All right. Someone asked, can a text message from a parent be included as written permission? As long as you're able to print that off, I think that that would be acceptable. I would still, I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like actual signatures. But I would just run that to your local licensing rep for their interpretation if a text message would be acceptable. All right. Because you may have one that's an old-fashioned one and say no. All right. Let's go over here. I don't know if y'all have noticed a trend, but there's a lot of changes throughout this document where it's going to refer us to manufacturer's instructions. We saw it on the sanitizing and the alternate chemicals. We've seen it on the crib stuff. We've seen it on the inflatables. I can't talk all of a sudden. We saw it on the inflatables now, that inflatables are used with manufacturer's recommendations. And then you're also going to see it when we get to fire safety and fire extinguishers. So again, inflatables, manufacturer's instructions. And then right here with your fire extinguishers, all right, where it's talking about your fire extinguishers must not be higher than 5 feet above the floor and the 4 inches. And then it says if the state or local fire marshal or the manufacturer's instructions have different mounting instructions, then you follow that. Okay. Sarah said, can you please go back to the inflatables? We can no longer take field trips to indoor inflatable parks. There's no rule change right there. It's the same rule that it's always been. We've never been allowed to, the way the rule reads is that enclosed inflatables can be used, but only one child at a time. Open inflatables are used according to the manufacturer's instructions. That's what the rule has been since like 2010. But you're going to see that they added while on the premises and on field trips throughout this whole new book. So it's going to be applicable to this one right here too. So if y'all are taking your children to these inflatable parks, and they're very popular, we have them popping up all over the place in my area of town. I would make sure that you get something in writing from the field trip, from the park, the inflatable park, on what the manufacturer's instructions are for use. And I would make sure that you keep that on file. Now, most of those items at those inflatable parks are open inflatables, and so it's going to be based on the manufacturer's instructions. If they do have the enclosed inflatables, the rule says one kid at a time on that one. All right. Diana asked, does this include a water slide? The inflatable water slides, the rule on that one is following the manufacturer's instructions, and that's what it's always been on that one too. Okay. Y'all can tell that summer's coming up, and y'all are all very concerned about these things. Yes, Abby says that she requested manufacturer's instructions for all the inflatables, and they happily gave it to her. That's when you know you're at a quality place. When they've got their ducks in a row and they've got this information ready for you, they should be familiar with these rules just like we are. When they easily have this available to hand to you, then you know you're at a quality place. If they want to argue with you, those are red flags, in my opinion. All right, so that's basically it right there, folks. And we were able to cover it in an hour. Oh, this one was kind of funny. There was one last thing. Under 5621, what communication requirements are there for vehicles? It talks about when transporting children, the vehicle must have a communication device such as a cell phone or a two-way radio. What is different about this one is the old standard said a cellular telephone, a pager, or a two-way radio. They took out pager. Obviously, none of us have pagers anymore. So I thought that one was just kind of comical right there. All right. But anyways, there's your updated standards. Like I said, nothing really earth-shattering. If anything, I think that these are going to help us. All right. And especially with the clarification on self-instructional, instructor-led training and that self-study training, those clarifications are going to be fantastic. Again, you see throughout this entire document, effective date April 15th. Okay, but again, what we're being told is technical assistance for the first 6 months. All right. How many years of timesheets and attendance records must you keep on site? Now, licensing is going to tell you 90 days or 3 months is how long that you must keep these documents. Pretty much all documents that licensing, they want you to have those on the premises for 3 months. Now, from a risk management standpoint, I always recommend that you keep these much longer. Now, Texas Workforce Commission, their rules on timesheets and attendance records is different than licensing, where licensing has the 3 months. I want to remind you that Texas Workforce Commission can go back and audit your payroll records for 7 years. So from a Texas Workforce Commission standpoint, you want to keep those for at least 7 years. Now, again, from a risk management standpoint, remember that the statute of limitations for doing something to a child is until the child turns 21. So any document that pertains to the child or the care of the child, I would keep indefinitely. All right. Lisa, is there a way to print this handout? Yes, you should be able to download it off of your little control panel. When you go to materials, you should be able to click on that and download it and print it. If you're not able to do that for whatever reason, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you. Or again, there's the website where you can download it straight from licensing as well. Okay. I have a sunscreen and insect repellent permission form that I created and I've been using for, gosh, 15 years. I have not seen one from licensing. And it's the same thing with that sleep positioning form that they referred to several times. I have not seen that document yet either, but apparently it's coming. Okay. But I'll be happy to share the document on the sunscreen and insect repellent that I've used for many, many years. It's part of my survival guide, but I don't mind sending it to you either. All right. Diana says, my licensing also asks for neosporin and peroxide. You know, again, the more documentation you get, the better I think it is for you. I would document any and everything that parent asks you to do, in my opinion. All right. And yes, Stephanie, the survival guide that you bought from me should have that sunscreen permission slip in it. If you can't find it, just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you. All right, very important, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for jumping on this last-minute webinar today. As soon as I got this information from licensing, I wanted to share it with you guys. Very important. You are going to get a certificate of completion from me. It comes directly from GoToTraining in about an hour. You get an email with the training certificate. It's very important that you print the email that it comes in and you attach the email to the certificate. That way you've got all of the required information under 1317. All right, but make sure you print that email and attach it to the certificate. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to manipulate what goes on that certificate from GoToTraining. I got a question. When you get a chance, please clarify the limit of hours for training. For employees or for your caregivers, they must have 24 hours of annual training. No more than 80% can be done through self-instructional material. When you do the math on that, it comes out to 19. So 19 of your 24 hours can be done through self-instructional material. 3 of those hours can be through self-study material. Okay. The rest of them, or the remaining 5 hours, has to be done instructor-led. Now, That's a very good question that I just got right there from Michelle. And if you go back to, and if y'all need to go, y'all go ahead and go. But if you want to hang on, there's a good question right here. When you go back to that definition of instructor-led training, and I kind of went a little too far right here, you're going to see that the opportunity to interact with the instructor is made available, and the instructor is able to interact in a timely manner. And that's an important thing right there. The interaction doesn't have to take place immediately. It just has to take place in a timely manner. So a phone call, an email, a chat, whatever, as long as that instructor is able to answer them in a timely manner, that makes it instructor-led. This is where you're going to see it right here. So like even with all of my stuff, my online trainings that I've got, we have a training hotline that if you've got a question about the material, you can call our training hotline and we're able to get back with you in a timely manner. That makes it instructor-led right there. So just a little tidbit on that one right there. All right. Awesome, awesome. I sure do appreciate all of y'all hopping on today and being part of our webinar. Again, just a reminder, next week I will be out of the office all week because we're going to be on our directors training cruise. It is a sold-out cruise. We have 71 directors and owners that will be cruising with us next week. So sad that I'm going to miss some of y'all, but we do have our fall training cruise coming up September 28th through October 2nd. Would love to see you on that training cruise. My weekend mini conference schedule is already posted on the internet for the fall, so save those dates so that I can see you this fall. Awesome. Y'all again, call me, email me if you have any questions, and thank you all for jumping on today. See you later.